Across the galaxy, there were many stories about humans, stories that made even the bravest aliens lower their voices and avoid the shadows. Some said humans were wild creatures that never gave up. Even when hopeless, others said they were dangerous, willing to fight until the very last breath. And many believed that humans were cursed with a strange fire inside them, a fire that made them survive storms, wars, and even the endless void of space on the jungle world of Ravos. Fear of humans was mixed with another fear, the fear of the apex beast. The apex beast was the most feared predator on the planet. Taller than trees, its hide as hard as armor, its claws sharper than steel. No alien dared to face it, for even their strongest hunters had fallen to its roar and fury. To the villagers who lived under the canopy of Ravos, the beast was like a living storm, something to be prayed against, not challenged. When word spread that a human had landed on their world, the aliens panicked. To them, it was as if two disasters had arrived at once. A man with the curse of humanity and a world already ruled by the apex beast. They whispered that destruction would follow. They told their children to stay inside. They barred their doors at night. The human, however, did not roar or threaten. He did not march with weapons or demand offerings. He simply walked into the village with calm steps. His clothes were worn, his boots covered in mud. His face looked tired, but there was no cruelty in his eyes. The aliens watched from the shadows, trembling, their eyes wide, their hearts full of old stories. Some spat on the ground, muttering that this man was dangerous. Others prayed to the stars that he would leave before the apex beast scented him. But the human did not leave. He stayed near the edge of the village, quiet. He helped carry water from the river. He fixed a broken gate when no one asked him. He lit a fire for warmth, though none dared to sit near him. Still, the fear never left, no matter how gentle he was. No matter how silent his steps, the aliens saw the shadow of the stories behind him. One night, as the moons of Ravos hung low, the villagers gathered to whisper about him. They asked each other, why is he here? Does he seek war? Does he plan to call more of his kind? And above all, does the apex beast know of his presence? The fear was heavy, like a weight pressing on every chest. In the darkness of the jungle, far beyond the village fires, the apex beast moved. Its glowing eyes pierced through the trees. Its steps made the earth tremble, and though no alien saw it yet, the beast had already scented the human. The alien elders warned that this would bring doom, for if the beast and the human ever crossed paths, the world itself might shake. The human, however, did not know of their fears. He sat by his small fire, staring at the stars. In his hand, he held a small carved figure, something worn, something precious. His eyes softened as he looked at it, and for a moment the mask of toughness slipped. There was sorrow in him, the kind of sorrow that told of battles lost and people missed. But no alien dared to ask, no alien dared to sit close enough to know. The fear of humanity lived strong in their hearts, and every whisper of the apex beast's roar made that fear double. To the villagers, the story was simple. If the beast found the man, blood would follow. If the man fought the beast, destruction would spread. They believed there was no other ending, yet fate does not always follow the path of fear. Sometimes it walks a road no one imagines, and as the night grew deeper and the jungle sang with hidden voices, the first threads of that road were being woven. The human did not yet know it, and neither did the villagers, but soon the legends of both human and beast would change forever. For in the silence of the jungle, a distant cry echoed, thin and broken, the sound of a child, not of the village, not of any alien kind, but something far more dangerous, something that would draw the human toward a destiny none of them could have believed. The night on Ravos was heavy with mist. The jungle air clung to every leaf, every branch, and every stone. The villagers kept their fires burning low, afraid of what moved beyond the tree line. They whispered to one another, clutching charms and beads. Their voices shook because they had heard it, a sound no one could mistake, the roar of the apex beast. It was not a sound like other creatures made. It was not just anger. It was a thunder that seemed to crawl under the skin. Shaking bones, it was power made into a voice. The ground trembled when the roar came again. The birds fled into the night sky, and the lesser predators slunk away. Every alien in the village froze. Their eyes wide, they knew the beast was close. Closer than ever before, the human sat by his fire at the edge of the village. He looked up when the roar echoed. His face did not twist with fear like the others. Instead, his jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the dark tree line. He rose slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. He did not grab his weapon first, he only listened, waiting. The aliens peered at him from their huts. Their whispers grew sharper. Why does he not hide? Why does he not run? Is he mad? The elders shook their heads. One muttered that humans had no sense of fear. Another said this was proof of the cursed fire inside them. The jungle stirred. Leaves rattled though no wind moved. Trees bent as something massive pushed through them. The apex beast was coming. The glow of its eyes appeared first, twin orbs of molten gold burning through the shadows. Then came its shape, a towering frame of muscle and armor like hide. Each step shook the ground. Each claw crushed roots and stones alike. The villagers collapsed to their knees, some hiding their faces. Others too frozen to move for generations. They had feared this creature and now it stood only steps away. The beast stopped at the edge of the firelight. Smoke rising from its nostrils, its gaze locked onto the human. Ignoring all others, the human did not flinch. He stood still, hands at his side, his weapon lay only a few feet away. But he did not reach for it. He stared back at the beast, his breath steady for a long moment. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. The jungle quieted. Even the insects dared not sing. Only the fire crackled. Throwing sparks into the heavy night, the beast growled, a low rumble that made the ground quake. Its fangs glistened in the firelight longer than any man's arm. Its claws scraped the earth, ready to strike. The villagers waited for death. They imagined the beast leaping forward, tearing the human apart in one motion. They believed no one could survive such fury. Yet nothing happened. The beast did not lunge, it only stared, its massive head tilting, studying him. The human slowly crouched. He picked up a stick and placed it into the fire, letting the flame catch. Then, without breaking eye contact, he pushed the burning stick into the ground between them. The fire flared, a line of light dividing man and monster. The beast huffed, the sound shaking the trees. But it did not cross the flame. Instead, it lowered its head slightly. As if curious, the human spoke then. His voice calm, steady. The words were soft. Not commands, not threats, but something else, something like respect. No alien could understand the human tongue, but they felt the meaning. It was not a challenge. It was not fear, it was recognition. The human was not standing as prey nor predator, but as something different. The beast stepped closer, its enormous shadow swallowing the firelight. The villagers whimpered, some covering their ears, but the beast did not strike. It sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring as it caught the human's scent. It let out another deep growl, a sound like a mountain groaning. Then the human did something unthinkable. He knelt, placing his hands on the earth. Lowering his head slightly, he showed no weapon, no rage, only a strange form of surrender and trust. The beast's eyes narrowed, its breath came heavy, steaming in the cool night. Then from behind it, another sound drifted through the trees, softer, weaker, a whimper. The villagers stiffened, realizing what it was, a child's cry. The shadows shifted and a small shape stumbled into view. The child of the apex beast, its hide not yet fully grown, its steps uneven, its flank was wounded, blood marking its side. The young one cried again, struggling to stand. The villagers gasped in horror. They thought the human would take this chance, strike the child, and bring down the beast by killing its bloodline. That was what any warrior would do, what any predator would do. But the human did not move like a hunter. Instead, his eyes softened. He slowly extended his hand, palm open, reaching not for a weapon but for the wounded child. The villagers held their breath. The beast let out a deafening roar that shook the trees, warning him, testing him. Yet the human did not pull back. His hand remained steady. His eyes filled with something the aliens had never seen before, compassion. The moment stretched, heavy and fragile. The night was silent except for the child's weak cry. The beast lowered its head, watching, waiting. Its golden eyes burned, filled with suspicion and something else, something almost like hesitation. And in that silence, a new path was being carved. A path no alien could have imagined, for the human was not there to kill, not there to conquer. He was there to reach, to heal, and the apex beast, feared by all, had not yet struck him down. The jungle had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. All eyes were on the human kneeling in the dirt, and on the wounded child that had stumbled into the firelight. The small apex beast whimpered again, its body trembling, its tiny claws digging into the ground as it tried to stand. Its hide was scratched and bleeding, one leg bent wrong. Its golden eyes, though smaller than its parents', still glowed faintly in the dark. The villagers shivered, clutching each other. Some whispered that this was the end. For surely the human would strike, this was his chance. A single blow to the child and the great beast would lose its legacy. Every hunter knew such a moment was the greatest prize, but the human did not lift his weapon. He did not even reach for it. Instead, he leaned forward, his hand open, his voice calm. He spoke words no alien understood, yet they carried meaning. The apex beast roared, the sound blasting through the village. Its claws tore lines into the ground, its head lowered close to the human. Warning him, the villagers screamed. Some turned away, unable to watch. They waited for blood to fall, but the human did not flinch. His hand remained steady, his gaze fixed not on the parent but on the child. The small beast took a step forward, trembling. It sniffed at the air, its nose twitching as it caught the strange scent of the human. There was no fear in the man's posture, only patience. The child whimpered again, and against all reason, it dragged itself closer. The villagers gasped, one whispering, "It cannot be." Another muttered, "This is madness." The child was only a breath away now, its golden eyes staring into the human's. The human moved slowly, gently touching the wound on its side. The child let out a sharp cry, flinching, but he did not pull back. Instead, he spoke softly again, his hand steady, his touch careful. The parent beast's growl rumbled like a storm, its jaws opened, fangs glistening. The human was seconds from death, but then something changed. The massive creature stopped, its breath slowed. Its eyes burned with suspicion, yet it did not strike. It watched, waiting as if testing. The human tore a strip from his own sleeve, wrapping it around the wound on the child's side. His hands were clumsy compared to a healer's, yet gentle compared to claws and fangs. The cloth stained with blood, but it slowed the bleeding. He tightened the knot carefully, whispering all the while. The child whimpered but did not pull away. It allowed him to finish for the villagers. This moment was beyond belief. They trembled, staring at what no one had ever seen before. A human kneeling before the most feared predator in the galaxy, binding its young's wound instead of cutting its throat. It was something that broke every law of nature they had known. The child blinked, weak but calmer now. It sniffed the man's hand and let out a small rumble, a sound more like a purr than a growl. The massive beast's head lifted slightly. Its golden eyes narrowed, studying the scene. Then, with a sound like thunder softening into rain, the beast lowered its head closer. Almost touching the earth, the villagers cried out, thinking the attack was finally coming, but no. The apex beast's eyes glowed in the firelight, and it did nothing. It only stood guard, watching as the human finished tending to its child. One of the alien elders whispered, "This cannot be, it has never trusted anyone." Another shook his head in disbelief. Their hearts pounded with fear and confusion. The human sat back slowly, his hands stained with blood. He looked at the child, then at the parent. His voice was low, steady. He did not ask for thanks. He did not boast of what he had done. He only gave a small nod, as if saying, "I mean no harm." The beast stared at him for a long moment, its breath steaming in the night air. Finally, it gave a single deep rumble, not of rage, not of warning, but something else. Something the villagers could not understand, but the human seemed to. For he nodded again quietly, his eyes calm. The child leaned against his leg, weak but comforted. The sight was impossible, unreal. The villagers whispered, their fear mixing with awe. In that moment, the world shifted. The stories told about humans, about their danger, about their fire, seemed to change shape. Yes, humans were dangerous. Yes, they carried fire. But now that fire was not destruction, it was warmth. It was protection. It was something that even the apex beast could see. The night grew deeper, the stars burning cold above. Yet the fire between man and beast burned warmer than anything the villagers had ever known. And as the human sat there, the child beast resting at his side, the parent standing watch, the villagers realized a new story was being born. A story not of fear, but of trust. A story that would spread far beyond their world. A story that no one would ever believe until they saw it with their own eyes. The fire burned low, its flames flickering against the dark jungle night. The villagers remained frozen, their eyes wide as they watched the impossible sight before them. The human sat with the child apex beast leaning against his leg, its wound wrapped in torn cloth, its breathing steady but weak and towering above them. The parent beast stood guard, claws sunk into the soil, its glowing golden eyes locked on the man. Every heartbeat felt like a drum in the villagers' ears. They expected the beast to strike at any moment, to shred the human for daring to touch its child, but instead the monster only watched. Its massive chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, steam curling into the cold night air. The human knew his life balanced on a blade's edge. Any wrong move, any sudden gesture, and the beast would tear him apart in less than a breath. But he did not retreat, he did not run. Instead, he kept working. His hands moved gently, tightening the cloth to stop the bleeding. He tore another strip from his shirt to clean the dirt from the wound. Each motion was slow, careful, showing he meant no harm. The child whimpered once, a soft cry that made the parent beast growl low. The sound rattled the ground, but the human only paused, lifted his hand, and whispered words of comfort. The language was foreign to the villagers, but the meaning was clear. It was the voice of someone who had held hurt lives before, of someone who had healed instead of harmed. Minutes passed like hours. The human's fingers worked quickly, binding the wound as best as he could with scraps. His hands were stained red, his face lined with sweat, yet he never stopped. The villagers hiding behind their huts whispered. Some said the beast was only waiting to kill him. Others muttered that no man could stand so close to death without shaking. But the human did not shake. His calmness was unnatural, or perhaps something deeper. He had chosen to face death with open hands, and the beast seemed to see it. When the last knot was tied, the human sat back slowly, his eyes lifted to meet the predator's burning gaze. He did not smile, did not boast. He only gave a small nod, a gesture of respect, as if saying, "It is done. I meant no harm." The beast lowered its head until its massive snout hovered just above the man. Its hot breath washed over him. Its jaws parted slightly, fangs longer than swords glistening in the firelight. The villagers cried out in terror, sure the end had come. But the beast did not strike, instead it rumbled, a sound like thunder rolling in the distance, a sound less of rage and more of acknowledgement. The human closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again, calm and steady. It was trust. Fragile and dangerous, but trust nonetheless. The child beast shifted, its head nudging the man's arm as if seeking comfort. The human let his hand rest gently on its hide. Patting it softly, the great predator above them did not roar, did not tear him apart. It simply stood there, a silent sentinel. But the night was not safe. Danger did not only wear the shape of the apex beast. From the shadows beyond the village, other eyes watched. Soldiers from a nearby outpost had followed the roar. Drawn by the sound of the beast so close to the settlement, they carried weapons of steel and fire. Their orders were simple: kill the beast. Take its child if possible, a prize like no other. The villagers did not know of these hunters, but the beast did. Its ears twitched, its eyes narrowed. A low growl built in its chest. The human looked up, sensing the change. He turned his head toward the jungle, his eyes sharp. He too felt it. Danger was coming. Suddenly, a flash of light tore through the trees. A spear of energy slammed into the ground near the beast. Burning the soil, the villagers screamed. Ducking for cover, the child beast cried out in pain and fear. Pressing close to the human, the parent beast roared, the sound splitting the night like lightning. The soldiers burst from the trees, their armor gleaming, their weapons raised. They shouted orders to one another, their eyes wide at the sight before them. The beast, the child and the human kneeling beside it. One soldier yelled, "Kill them all." Another aimed at the child. But before the shot could fire, the human moved. He grabbed his weapon from the dirt, not to point at the beast, but at the soldiers. His eyes blazed with fury. He stood between the hunters and the wounded child. The villagers gasped. For the first time, they saw what humanity's fire truly meant. It was not only destruction, it was protection, a burning shield that refused to break. The beast roared beside him, a roar so loud it shook the soldiers' courage. The ground cracked under its weight. The jungle itself seemed to awaken side by side. Man and monster faced the coming storm. Blood had already been spilled, and more would follow. But something greater had been born that night, trust earned in blood. The villagers, hidden and trembling, would tell this story for generations, of the night when the beast chose not to kill, when the human chose not to harm, of the night when the two most feared creatures on Ravos stood together, and in that moment, under the dark sky filled with fire and fear, a bond stronger than legend was forged. The night of Ravos burned with echoes of battle. The roar of the apex beast rolled through the jungle like thunder, shaking the ground and rattling the huts of the village. The human stood in front of the wounded child. his weapon ready, his body tense. He was only one man. Yet he stood against soldiers armed with steel and fire. Soldiers who had come not for peace but for blood. The soldiers spread out, their eyes fixed on the prize. They wanted the child. They wanted to chain it, study it, turn it into a weapon. To them, the apex beast was not a living thing but a tool of war. If they killed the parent and captured the young, their names would be sung as heroes in the empire. The human understood this at once. He saw the way their eyes gleamed with greed. He knew their kind. He had seen them before on other worlds. Men who hid behind laws and orders but carried cruelty in their hearts. He tightened his grip on his weapon, his breath steady. The villagers hid inside their huts, their fear so heavy they could hardly breathe. Some whispered that the human had brought this doom upon them. Others trembled in silence, watching through cracks in the walls. What they saw filled them with both terror and awe. For the man they feared now stood as a shield between them and the darkness. The apex beast lowered its head. Its golden eyes burned like suns. Its chest rumbled with a growl that shook the trees. The child whimpered behind the human, pressing close, its wound still raw, its body weak. Yet it trusted the man more than it trusted the jungle. A soldier stepped forward, raising his weapon. He shouted for the human to move, promising his life would be spared if he gave up the child. But the man only shook his head slowly. His voice was calm yet hard as stone. He said nothing in words they could understand. But the meaning was clear. He would not move. He would not give them the child. The soldier fired. A burst of energy tore through the night. The human dropped to the ground, pulling the child with him. The blast scorched the soil. Sparks flying into the air, the beast roared. The sound so powerful the soldier staggered back in fear. Then the ground itself seemed to move. The beast charged, claws tearing into the earth, trees snapping like twigs under its weight. The soldiers panicked, firing wildly. Their weapons lit up the night, beams of light slicing through the jungle. Some shots struck the beast's hide, leaving scorched marks. But its armor-like skin did not break. The human fought too. He fired at the soldiers with deadly aim. His movements were sharp, his eyes blazing with that strange human fire. Each shot was not for glory, not for conquest, but for protection. His only goal was to keep the child safe. The villagers could not believe what they were seeing. The man and the monster fought as one. Every step the beast took shook the earth. Every shot the human fired cut through the dark. Together they were a storm, unstoppable and unbroken. But the soldiers were many, and they had prepared traps hidden in the trees. Nets powered by energy crackled. Ready to drop, one soldier shouted, "Activate the snare." The air hummed as the trap came alive. The beast roared again. Sensing the danger, it swiped a tree aside, crushing two soldiers with one blow. But as it did, the net fell, glowing strands wrapping around its body. The mighty predator struggled, the energy biting into its hide. Its roar turned to pain. The human's heart pounded. He saw the soldiers rushing forward with blades and chains. Ready to take the child, he leapt into their path, striking one across the face, knocking another to the ground. His weapon blazed, cutting through the night. But there were too many. They closed in, their greed stronger than their fear. The child beast cried, its small body trembling. It pressed against the man's back, seeking protection. The human turned, placing his hand on its head, whispering words of comfort even as danger closed around them. He was not only fighting for his life now, he was fighting for trust, for the bond that had begun in blood. The villagers wept in silence, unable to look away. They had feared the human. They had feared the beast, but now they saw something greater. They saw courage, they saw loyalty. They saw a bond stronger than death. With a final roar, the beast shattered part of the net, claws tearing through the glowing strands. Its golden eyes blazed brighter than fire. The soldiers froze in terror as the human stood beside it. Blood on his hands, his weapon raised, enemies filled the dark. But now the dark itself seemed to fear them. Man and beast stood together, their shadows stretching tall in the firelight. The battle was not yet won, but something greater had already been forged. Enemies could come with chains and fire, they could come with greed and cruelty, but they would find something waiting for them. A bond born in fear, tested in blood, and unbroken in the dark, and that bond would not fall. Not tonight, not ever. The jungle of Ravos burned with fire and light. The air cracked with energy blasts, the earth shook with roars, and the villagers hid inside their huts, their hearts frozen with fear. Outside, the human and the apex beast stood side by side, facing the soldiers who had come to claim the child. The beast's hide glowed where the energy net still clung to it. Sparking and biting into its flesh, the monster strained, muscles bulging as it tore against the glowing strands. Its golden eyes burned with fury. Its roar thundered across the night, shaking trees and scattering birds from their nests. The human fought like a man with nothing left to lose. His weapon fired again and again, each shot finding its mark. His arms ached, his lungs burned, but he refused to fall. Behind him, the child beast whimpered, its small body pressed to the earth. Trembling but alive, the man looked at it once, just once, and in that moment his resolve hardened. He would not let them take the child, even if it cost his life. The soldiers pressed forward, their armor gleaming, their faces twisted with determination. They had lost men already, but greed pushed them onward. One shouted, "Bring down the beast. Kill the human if you must." Another raised a heavy cannon, aiming directly at the child. The man saw the weapon charging. He leapt without thought. Rolling across the ground, his weapon fired, striking the cannon and knocking it from the soldier's hands. The blast went wild, exploding in the trees. Flames racing through the jungle canopy. Sparks rained down like burning stars. The beast strained again, and with a roar that split the night, it tore free from the energy net. Glowing strands snapped, falling in smoking pieces. The ground trembled as the predator rose to its full height. Its claws dug into the soil, its tail swept aside two soldiers, crushing them against the rocks. For a heartbeat, the battlefield froze. Soldiers stared at the massive creature, their courage trembling. The human stood, blood running down his arm, his weapon raised. The villagers peered from the shadows, their eyes wide with disbelief. Then the storm broke, the beast charged, its roar shaking the ground. The human rushed forward at its side. Together they struck predator and man, fire and flesh moving as one. The soldiers fired, beams of energy streaking through the dark. Some struck the beast, burning its hide. Others missed as the human ducked and rolled, returning fire with deadly precision. The battle turned into chaos, screams, roars, and the crackle of weapons filled the air. Trees fell, huts splintered. The jungle itself seemed to cry out, yet through it all, the human and the beast did not falter. Every move the man made, the beast followed. Every strike the beast unleashed. The man defended one soldier, rushed the child, chain in hand, but the human was faster. He slammed into the soldier, knocking him to the ground, his fists struck with fury. And when the soldier did not rise, the man turned back, shielding the young one with his body. The child whimpered, pressing against him, trusting him more than the safety of its own parent. The beast saw this, its golden eyes flashed. It roared with such force that the soldiers stumbled back, fear finally cracking their courage. Some began to retreat, shouting in panic, but their commanders barked orders, demanding they stand, demanding they kill. The human's breath came heavy. His body shook from exhaustion. His weapon smoked in his hands, yet his eyes never dimmed. He looked at the beast, and for a moment, in that storm of fire and blood, they understood one another. They were no longer strangers, no longer enemies of legend. They were bound. The beast roared again, lunging forward, its claws slashed, sending armored men flying. The human fought with everything he had. Diving, striking, firing, his body moved on instinct, his spirit burning bright. At last, the battlefield grew quiet. The last soldiers stumbled into the jungle, retreating in terror, leaving the dead and broken behind. The flames burned high, but the night air felt still. The human dropped to one knee, his chest heaving, his arms hung heavy, his weapon nearly slipping from his grip. The child pressed against him, its golden eyes soft. It licked the blood from his hand, a strange gesture of trust. The man let out a tired laugh, though his body ached. He reached out, resting his palm against the child's head. The apex beast stepped closer. Towering above him, the villagers gasped. Sure, the end had come now that the battle was done. They held their breath as the monster lowered its massive head. Its golden eyes glowed like suns. Its snout pressed close to the human. Its hot breath washed over him, but it did not kill him. Instead, it rumbled low, a sound not of anger, not of warning, but of respect. The man met its gaze. His eyes calm, though his body shook. He gave a small nod, his hand still resting on the child. The villagers stared in silence, unable to speak. The stories they had known their whole lives were shattered before their eyes. Humans were not only fire and fury. The apex beast was not only death and terror. Together they had stood against the dark. Together they had won. The battle was over. But the story had only begun. The jungle of Ravos was quiet at last. The smoke of battle hung in the air, drifting above broken trees and scorched ground. The villagers stepped carefully from their huts, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected to see ruin, to see the beast standing over the body of the human. Instead, they saw something no one in the galaxy had ever imagined. The human sat in the dirt, his clothes torn, his skin stained with blood. Beside him lay the child apex beast, its flank still bandaged, its golden eyes half closed in trust. Towering over them both stood the parent beast, its massive head lowered, its glowing eyes locked on the man, not with hunger, not with rage, but with something far greater, respect. The villagers whispered in awe. Some knelt to the ground, unable to process what they saw. The beast, the predator that ruled their world, bowed its head slightly toward the human, its breath washed hot against him, and yet he did not flinch. He lifted his hand, resting it once more on the wounded child. It was then that the villagers understood. The human had done what no one dared. He had faced death with open hands. He had touched the untouchable, and in return, the apex beast had given him trust. Word of the battle spread quickly beyond the jungle. Messengers carried stories to the cities. From the cities, rumors flew across the stars. Alien merchants spoke in hushed voices. Soldiers shook their heads in disbelief. Scholars denied it could be true. But still the story traveled, growing with every telling. Every alien feared humanity, they whispered, until the apex beast trusted one with its child. The human stayed in the village for a time. His body needed rest, his wounds needed healing. But he asked for nothing in return. He ate little, slept by the fire, and kept watch over the child. The beast remained close, circling the village but never attacking, its golden eyes always near, its growl echoing through the night to warn away other predators. The villagers slowly came closer. At first they brought water and food, leaving it at a distance. Then a few dared to speak to him. Their fear had not vanished, but it had changed. It was no longer the fear of a curse, but the awe of something greater than themselves. One night, as the stars burned bright, the elder of the village approached. His hands trembled as he spoke. He said the human had changed the story of their people, that they would no longer speak of humans only as destroyers. They would speak of him, the one who had earned the trust of the beast, the one who had stood against the dark. The human only shook his head softly. His eyes lifted to the stars. He said little, but those who listened felt his meaning. He had not done it for glory nor for legend. He had done it because it was right, because even the fiercest predator's child deserved to live. The child beast grew stronger, its wound healed day by day. It followed the human wherever he went, small claws tapping against the earth. The villagers watched in wonder as it leaned against him like a companion. As it rumbled softly when he touched its head, the parent beast never left. But its roars no longer shook the village with terror. They became a shield, a warning to all who might harm the bond it now protected. The villagers began to feel safe in a way they had never known. Safe not because the beast was gone, but because it had chosen to stand with the human. When the soldiers returned weeks later, they did not come with chains, they came with fear. They saw the human standing beside the beast, the child at his feet, and they did not attack. They lowered their weapons, whispering among themselves. Then they fled into the stars, carrying the story further. The legend grew until it reached worlds far beyond Ravos, worlds where humans were still cursed and feared. But now those whispers carried something else, a question that unsettled rulers and frightened armies. If even the apex beast could trust a human, then what else could they do? The villagers carved symbols into stone, telling the story for their children. They called it the Night of Trust. They painted the image of the human kneeling beside the child, the beast bowing its head, and with every retelling, the fear of humanity changed into something new. Respect the human, however, did not stay forever. One morning, before the suns had fully risen, he packed his few belongings. His clothes were patched, his weapon scarred, but his eyes were steady. The villagers begged him to stay. The child beast nuzzled his hand. The great beast lowered its head, rumbling softly. The man smiled faintly. He rested his hand on the child one last time. Then he looked up at the towering parent and gave a small nod. No words were spoken, but the meaning was clear. Trust had been given, trust would remain with slow steps. He walked into the jungle. His figure fading into the mist, the beast roared once. Not in anger, but in farewell. The villagers wept softly, knowing they had witnessed something no galaxy would ever forget. From that night forward, the story lived on. A story told in markets and on ships, in villages and in cities. A story of a human who was feared by all but who earned the trust of the greatest predator known. And in that story, humanity was no longer just fire and fury. It was also hope, it was also compassion. It was a bond that could even tame the darkness, and so the legend began. The legend of the human and the apex beast's child. A legend that would echo through the stars, reminding all who heard it that fear can change, that enemies can become allies, and that sometimes the most feared fire in the galaxy burns brightest when it protects.